Title: The Farmer and the Lawyer, a Legacy Written in Water. Opening scene: courthouse atmosphere. The county courthouse in Bramble Creek had rarely seen this kind of turnout. On a sticky Tuesday morning in late summer, the air hung heavy and damp as ancient ceiling fans stirred the muggy atmosphere, their rusted blades clicking faintly. Long wooden benches creaked beneath the weight of spectators, neighbors, journalists, and curious onlookers gathered to witness what had been billed as a high-stakes legal drama. Case number 1087, Bramble Creek Developers versus Harold McCall. At the center of it all was a legal dispute that had divided the community, a clash between a corporate development company and a 73-year-old farmer whose family had tilled the same land for generations. The developers accused Harold of illegally diverting water from a stream they claimed now belonged to them, an action they said jeopardized their multi-million-dollar luxury housing project. Presiding over the matter was Judge Clarissa Holt, a respected and no-nonsense figure in the state judiciary, known for her fair rulings and keen sense of legal history. As she struck the gavel 3 times, the courtroom fell into a reverent hush. We now convene proceedings for Bramble Creek Developers versus Harold McCall. Are both parties present and ready to proceed? A sharply dressed man in a dark gray suit stood confidently from the plaintiff's table. Alexander Crane, representing Bramble Creek Developers, Your Honor. We're prepared to proceed. Across the aisle, Harold McCall rose more slowly. His clothes were simple, but clean, a faded gray suit jacket over a starched shirt, likely pressed by hand that morning. His hands, scarred and sun-darkened from decades of work, clutched a simple folder. Harold McCall, Your Honor. I'll be speaking for myself today. A few whispers rustled through the courtroom. Representing himself? Against one of the state's most feared corporate attorneys? Judge Holt gave a single nod. Mr. Crane, you may present your opening statement. The corporate argument. Crane walked to the center of the courtroom like a man who knew the room belonged to him. He spoke with clarity and practiced persuasion. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a simple matter. Bramble Creek Developers lawfully acquired the northern tract of Crescent River and its surrounding lands, including all water rights, from the Alton estate last year. These rights were filed and recorded with the county, properly and officially. He began pacing slowly, his eyes making deliberate contact with the jury. Since purchasing the property, Bramble Creek has invested over $8.6 million in a modern, sustainable housing project. This project will bring jobs, tax revenue, and growth to this community. And yet, those plans have been delayed, even endangered, by Mr. McCall's actions. Crane paused, gesturing toward Harold. Mr. McCall installed unauthorized irrigation systems that siphon water upstream, water that no longer belongs to him, but to Bramble Creek. We issued multiple cease and desist letters, offered compromise solutions, but he refused them all. We have satellite imagery, expert testimony, and hydrological surveys that show consistent diversion, costing our client significant financial harm. Crane held up a thick folder dramatically. We seek damages of $520,000 and an immediate injunction preventing further diversion. He returned to his seat with a confident nod. The farmer's response. Judge Holt turned toward the defendant's table. Mr. McCall, your opening statement. Harold stood, gripping the table for balance. He didn't walk forward. He didn't have charts or exhibits. He didn't need them. Your Honor. Members of the jury, thank you for hearing me today. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a farmer. My grandfather, Emmett McCall, bought our land in 1924. We've farmed that soil ever since. He took a moment to look around the room, his eyes settling briefly on familiar faces. For nearly a century, our families used water from what we've always called McCall Stream. It's how we've kept our fields alive. We didn't take anything that wasn't ours. We've honored the land and the stream with the same respect my grandfather taught me. There was a long pause. Crane smirked slightly, leaning to whisper to his assistant. The courtroom noticed. Harold ignored him. I don't believe Bramble Creek Developers bought those water rights because those rights were never the Altons to sell. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The turning point, a forgotten decree. Judge Holt sat upright. Do you have evidence to support that claim, Mr. McCall? Yes, Your Honor, Harold said, pulling a folded, yellowed document from his pocket. This is a water rights adjudication issued by Judge Everett Haynes, dated 1936. It recognizes my grandfather's prior appropriation rights to McCall Stream. The document was passed to the judge, who adjusted her glasses and read silently. Her brow furrowed as the room held its breath. Mr. Crane, she said after a moment, did your firm conduct a full title search? Crane looked irritated. Of course. We went back 60 years, which exceeds the standard 30-year requirement. Well, Judge Holt said coolly, this decree is 89 years old. And it's legitimate. Suddenly, the tide of the courtroom shifted. Wisdom versus knowledge. Crane tried to regain momentum, his voice tinged with sarcasm. Mr. McCall, while I respect your rustic charm, the law is complex. Water rights evolve, and old claims can become obsolete. If you had formal training. Harold didn't flinch. He spoke calmly. You're right, Mr. Crane. I didn't go to law school. I learned in the fields. I learned watching the sky, the soil, and the water. My hands built the channels that irrigate our crops. I fed people with these hands. Can you say the same? The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Even Crane had no retort. The recess, the shift, and the legacy revealed. Judge Holt called a recess, citing the need to review the decree. During the break, murmurs filled the air. Journalists whispered into recorders. Farmers patted Harold on the back. Margaret Alton, daughter of the man who sold the land to Bramble Creek, sat quietly in the back. My father never told me about any old water rights, she whispered to her husband. Did he even know? He shrugged. I guess we're about to find out. When court resumed, Judge Holt confirmed the document's authenticity and requested additional proof of continuous use. Harold produced a leather folder filled with tax records, water usage logs, and photos of the irrigation system going back decades. There's more, he said, almost apologetically. Here's a letter from Robert Alton, Margaret's father, from 1979. In it, he acknowledges our family's water rights. Says he respects the handshake deal between him and my father. The case reaches resolution. Crane was furious, objecting to the late introduction of evidence. Judge Holt was unmoved. This court exists not just for procedural formality, Mr. Crane. It exists to find the truth. In the following days, Bramble Creek's legal team scrambled to salvage their position. But every record they found pointed to the same conclusion. Harold McCall had the law and history on his side. 2 weeks later, a surprise development occurred. Bramble Creek requested a private meeting with Harold and Judge Holt. The corporation, facing public backlash and legal uncertainty, proposed a settlement. They offered to officially recognize McCall Stream, respect Harold's water rights, and even name the Greenbelt in their development after the McCall family. In return, Harold agreed to allow seasonal water sharing under specific terms. The legacy of one man's dignity. Years passed. The story of Harold McCall's quiet strength and wisdom became a touchstone in legal circles and agricultural communities alike. Law schools studied the case. State legislation was amended to protect historical water rights more carefully. Harold continued farming, mentoring young people in sustainable agriculture. When he passed away at age 91, his funeral was attended by hundreds, lawyers, farmers, and students alike. A small plaque now stands near the stream. Here, one man stood for truth and reminded us all, wisdom does not require a degree, only dignity, patience, and the courage to speak it. Final scene, a new generation. 10 years later, Harold's granddaughter, Ava McCall, walks beside a young group of students, giving a tour of the land. She's a professor now, agricultural policy and environmental law. This is where my grandfather stood up for what was right, she says, pointing toward the stream. And he did it without shouting, without lawyers, just with the truth. From the nearby community garden, a child calls out, Ms. McCall, will the stream always be ours? Ava smiles. Yes, because he made sure it flows not just through our land, but through our story. And with that, the next generation continues to walk a path first carved by a farmer who chose wisdom over pride, dignity over conflict, and left behind more than just a legal victory. He left behind a legacy.